Sorry, I don't have anything funny to say for the cold open today.
Oh shit, we already rolling. I'm over here playing Terraria.
That's okay. I'm on Reddit, so.
But I tell you what I do got.
Oh shit.
No way. He did it, folks. He fucking did it. Tell us the story.
Oh, it's just a recorder. It's nothing special about it.
Okay, now you can tell the story.
I hit up the teenager and I was like, hey, do you still have your recorder from elementary school? And they're like, I don't know, maybe. And I was like, well, do you know where it might be? And they go, well, it's probably in the closet. I'm like, all right, well, if you know where it is and or happen to find it, please give it to me. That's all there is to it. It's not like that great of a story.
Shit, now I have the weakest instrument of them all. Y'all can make like different notes. All I can do is
I mean, that's pretty cool.
It's cool, but can we make music with it?
Wes, you got to understand, you're like the OG, man. We're copycats.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like when like you're the first person with a car and it's like a 1989 Probe and then people roll up with like Mustangs and Camaros.
I know how you feel. I certainly do.
Ashley's sleeping, so I really should limit the harmonica use.
Where do you record at?
In my office, but you know, it's not
Dude,
like we live in a mansion.
It's harmonica. It's not like they're bagpipes.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Could you fucking imagine?
Yeah, Wes, that's the next one up. So yeah, exchange the kazoo for bagpipes.
Get kicked out of my condo real quick.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you're tuning in from across the country and around the world. This is the Life Midwest Podcast. Thanks for tuning into episode 67, everybody. Join us, a washed-up musician, a communications major, and an Army veteran, originally from the Midwest, as we talk about events that are current and events. Here to carry out that episode and that show in general is our Thai correspondent, Wes Shirley.
Oh, hello.
And Seattle's best, and I don't mean the coffee, Lenny Wells.
Hey-o. I know, Kevin, you've kind of been dealing with this a little bit more, maybe a little sooner than I have, but it's fucking hot as balls in my neck of the woods this week. Like, it's going to be 97 on fucking Wednesday, and I was outside working like in the heat all goddamn day. And all I could think is that it's like just too hot and that I'm really living in
unacceptable condition. Unacceptable. Dude, you can't live like this.
And now that Lenny's cracked himself up and had a little bit of fun before, tonight's dreary. So actually, I don't know that I would say it's dreary because it does potentially have a potentially healthy outlook. I think it depends on how you interpret the current problem and kind of potential solutions or kind of ways out of it, or what you can do about it as an individual. Is that fair to say, Wes?
Yeah. I feel like most people know someone who experiences and or expresses opinions of the topic we'll be talking about. I guess it's good to know about.
So what is the topic that we're covering today? Like what's it called?
So many of our listeners may be familiar with like the lay flat movement, previously banned in China because I guess you can ban movements. It's now called Bai Lan for reasons of it being banned with a different name. But basically Bai Lan in Chinese, and I should have mentioned this when Mike was on the episode, he could have corrected us. I think it's pronounced Bai Lan. But it means let it rot. And basically, it is society is basically falling apart, and why should we participate in it? And in many places in the world, people are experiencing that.
It's interesting that you bring up a point that you make later in your notes, and one of the things that you mentioned as far as a sentiment is that you felt was, why should I try, why should I care if the world I live in is not the one I want to be in? And I think it's interesting because you can almost link it to like this like depressive type of symptom that people have, where it's like, we're like you just said, why participate in society if society is dying? I know it sounds like this episode is starting off very, very fucking heavy, but stick with me on this, folks. I promise you, this is a good one today. Lenny, any initial thoughts that you want to bring to the table on this?
I do certainly understand why people feel the way they do when it comes to this topic of Bai Lan. So, and I am certainly sympathetic to the idea, the sentiment, I guess, if not the actual lifestyle, the action about it. So.
I do want to read something word for word here just to get the conversation started. Not because I don't have any notes or bullet points to go off of, but just because this is just so well written by Wes. Wes writes, for the first time since industrialization, the youth, or those in two most recent generations, are experiencing less prosperity, less social mobility, and more despair in developed nations. It is projected the same will happen to developing nations as they reach this point in their lifetime. We like to blame it on whoever is convenient. Often we blame the previous generation. Quote, boomers have stolen our future, unquote, for example. And while this may have some merit, it's not exactly true or going to help us get anywhere. And it may be an anecdotal example that I have here, guys, but I really think about how often we blame boomers and the older generations for our misfortunes and our woes. For example, denying climate change and a plethora of other things. But it's Wes brings up a good point. It's not going to help us get out of the issue that we're in, even if that is 100% true. But I do agree with Wes that it has some merit. Wes, anything to kind of footnote in there or add in there?
Yeah, I think the issue with the sentiment boomers have stolen our future is, yeah, a large portion of the people who are, I guess, profiteers, pirates of our future would be boomers, but really it's cross-generational. It's more of a wealth divide or a class divide than it is a generational divide. And like, really what's happening is profiteering, right? Like, the reason you can't afford a home, or the reason you can't afford a car, or the reason you can't afford to go to the hospital or anything is profiteering, in my opinion. And it's basically just this consolidation of wealth within a small minority, and they keep making the rules to benefit them and to the detriment of others. And we keep saying, oh, boomers have stolen our future. Well, I mean, to a small extent, perhaps. I do link a video I watched that I used for this portion of the research. It's by, I think it's Economics Explained, and I will have that link in the description because I'm unsure by just looking at the link. But basically, it's not just the boomers who are responsible for this issue. It's the wealth inequality and the regulation that goes along with that.
So what you're saying is that boomers dying isn't going to fix anything?
Probably not, realistically. I mean, who's going to inherit their wealth if there is any wealth left, right? So like, healthcare is going to siphon away a lot of the cost from the boomers. Keep in mind, all boomers aren't rich. All boomers aren't in the quote unquote ruling class. There's a lot of boomers as well as millennials and every other generation who are impoverished, who are living paycheck to paycheck, who are also having their wealth siphoned, or I guess wealth is a bad term, having their wages siphoned due to cost of living, due to healthcare, due to any other nickel and dime scenario that is put in place for profiteers. Who's going to inherit the fortunes that are left? It's going to be people who share that ideology, or people who just want to retire because they're so tired of the world. I don't want to work anymore. I just inherited my father's wealth. I'm going to go retire early. Like, do you think millennials are going to do any better? Like, it's going to be another imbalance, who has money and who doesn't.
Well, I don't disagree that there's certainly like boomers and like Gen X and you know, people of older generations than us millennials that are impoverished. I don't think that like the okay boomer stereotype exists without reason. And I think its merit, the merit is a little bit more, I think it has more than just like a little merit, you know? And that's because while people of older generations, again, while there are those that are impoverished, um, I feel, and maybe this is just anecdotal by like my own personal experience, but even though they're impoverished or they don't have like this huge accumulation of wealth, it's more of like a mindset that is being recognized by people our age or you know around our age, like maybe like younger Gen X as millennials and Gen Z, because and it's not just like boomers. Certainly, like I said, it's a whole mindset for people that believe a certain way, especially like when it comes to like economic choices.
I get what you're saying, and by no means is this episode like a war on boomers, but at the same time, like there is absolutely a mindset.
I think in order for pirates and profiteers to be or to like win, there needs to be a large ignorant population below them, or a credulous population allowing it to happen. So there's definitely merit to a large majority of boomers being responsible for the policy that's in place, voting against their own interest. But we also had a lot of young people, for example, vote Trump into office. And if you go onto the internet, depending on which website you go to, let's throw out 4chan. Fuck you, 4chan. You get a lot of fascist, like a lot of just let's take a huge step back mentality. As opposed to progress, we want to keep things the way they were in this mythical golden age of the 50s, where women and blacks couldn't vote or whatever. Obviously, they could both vote at that time, but like that would be the ideal land for these people. And not to generalize fascist and boomers completely together, that's absurd. But like we also have a lot of really like we wouldn't have what we have in this world that's good generally if it also wasn't for boomers. So I don't want to point them out specifically because they're like a lot of our scientific institutions, a lot of our progress, a lot of our creative works all come from level-minded, modern thinking, progressive boomers. It's more of people in like the Rust Belt, for example, people in the heartland of America, where agriculture and manufacturing used to be the number one source of income, where it's now not so much due to modernization, industrialization, what have you. We have this basically credulous way of thinking where it's easy to pull the wool over a large population's eye, throw them some propaganda, and then profiteer off of them. And that group of people are cross-generational. The ones who are stealing society away from the future generations is intergenerational. But I think the problem does lie largely in a media illiterate and credulous majority boomer population, unfortunately. Not to call anyone out, but like if you look at the numbers. So I think we can look at Bai Lan as a cautionary tale for the U.S. As the U.S. goes deeper and deeper into this dystopia that a lot of us progressives are fearing, we can look at how the youth in China are handling it. And basically, it's just opting out of society. Right now, you can't get a car, you can't get a home. If you have it's so dystopian that they have cameras everywhere that like you're monitored. If you accidentally litter, like it could be like something falls out of your pocket, like you're docked a social score, and then you can't get a loan on a house. Wages aren't good enough to meet your mortgage if you do have a house, and you can lose your job for your social score going down. So at like they started capitalism after us, but because of their them starting in a modern age, they had the tools to explode ahead of us almost. And they're experiencing this late end stage capitalism where people are just not participating. They're saying F it. And to an extent, we have that here in the US, but we don't have big movements like Lay Flat or Bai Lan, or we don't have NEETs to the extent that like Japan has hikikimoris, for example, people who just don't leave their house, or like South Korea has such a wealth inequality that you just find a lot of people dead in their apartment. Like that's one of the leading cause of deaths there. So like we're going to start experiencing that. These newer capitalist economies that boomed out of control compared to us because we had a slow, gradual start as we were like the pioneers almost. We're seeing what happens next. The fuck it mentality that we're seeing kind of across the board, we can definitely anticipate that coming to the US, I feel.
And it's a dangerous sentiment because, as you brilliantly write here, you can't make demands to people who don't give a fuck.
Correct.
I mean, there's no better way to put that. You genuinely can. It's like it's why I think maybe it goes part into like this, like the Great Resignation. I think the history books are going to refer to it as the Great Resignation, where people were tired of getting shit on for shit salary and they left their job. And now you have all these people who are like, oh, people don't want to work anymore. It's like, no, people are just tired of getting shit on for shit pay, and they can't turn around and use that shit pay to get anything that the older generations say that they want in life, so they opt out. So in a way, is this what you would you refer to this as something similar to Gandhi's non-cooperation movement, or civil disobedience, or a combination of the two? What would you say?
I think it's kind of like all of that. So Gandhi's non-cooperation is basically, opt out. We don't like British occupation. Just don't do anything. Don't help them. Don't be part of it. Sit around and protest. Don't participate in what you don't like. Same with civil disobedience. Civil disobedience kind of implies you break the law. Just like with sit-ins or like sitting in the front of the bus, for example. There were actual laws that said, African Americans can't sit at the front of the bus, or you can't sit in this white establishment. And they went against the laws to disobey civilly. They did it peacefully. They protested. They said this is wrong. So in certain scenarios, it could be like civil disobedience, just trying to operate outside of society. You benefit from society, but you don't give back to it. Like order all the fast food you want, play all the video games you want, do all the drugs you want, just kind of F it. And then when you're called upon to help society, absolutely don't. It's kind of the suggestion behind Bai Lan and Lay Flat. And I'm probably heavily skewed on this, but I see the whole picture as progressives like, let's make the world a better place. Conservatives being like, oh, hell no. And then like the people who practice Bai Lan and Lay Flat looking at the conservatives like overreaction and over setback to the progressives being like, oh, hell no. Just like a whole bunch of people being like, no, fuck this. No, fuck this. No, fuck this. Like, to the point where people are just laying flat.
So we're at a point where nothing will change unless the shit hits the fan in one or more tragic ways. Society collapses, government takeover, some other drastic shit. What can you do about it? We'll find out after the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the Life Midwest podcast. On the other side of the break, it's your host, Kevin Palmer, Wes, Shirley, and Lenny Wells. I almost fucked that up, but I didn't, so you wouldn't have known unless I'd said so. If you're looking for ways to support us, we do have a plethora of ways to do so. You can reach out to us through any of our major social platforms at The Life Midwest, including TikTok now. We have a website at thelifemidwest.com. You can also email us at support@thelifemidwest.com. I don't think there are any new emails to read this week, but I'm going to quickly check while I talk live because this is live. And you can also leave us a review on your favorite platform, which helps us out and gets us more noticed and increases our ratings and all that good stuff. So No new emails to read this week. We always will read them unless you don't want us to. If you do happen to drop us a line, we do appreciate it. Until then, I do want to do a quick recap of kind of what we've covered so far today with Bai Lan and kind of, what is it?
So Bai Lan is a movement of voluntarily giving up on the pursuit of life goals because the goals are unobtainable. A couple of quotes that I wrote down, they kind of summarize it well. Somebody must be a loser. Why not me? In the economic scenario, there's winners and losers. What does it mean to smash a cracked pot? Absolutely nothing. Dead pigs are not afraid of boiling water, so fuck it. Previously, when people called me a loser, and this is my favorite, I replied, damn, who are you talking about? Now when people call me a loser, I reply, you're a good judge of character. So it's important to note that this is a movement in China currently. China has vastly different social economical institutions than we have here in the US. It is capitalism. It is dystopian late stage capitalism, in my opinion, at least. And I don't think we're too far removed from it. But their culture is obviously different. They have a different form of government and whatnot. So this does affect China at the moment, but there are some parallels to here in the US with like the Great Resignation and NEETs, which are neither employed or in education or training, people who basically just sit around and do nothing. We can see Bai Lan in like rural communities, urban communities. Think of like the white plague of heroin overdoses, opiate addiction, people living off of welfare government assistance. Think of hip hop music, rap music for the last 30 years. It was anti-establishment, F the system, opt out, do your own thing, so on and so forth. So it's not too far removed at all, but it is a China thing at the moment.
Wes, what would you suggest to maybe not be in opposition to Bai Lan, but like an alternative? Like what would you say to somebody that is feeling this way?
So yeah, today's episode's been a little bleak, but I think we can get past that. Just like any negative movement, or I don't want to call it a negative movement, any type of negative philosophy where it's like damaging to yourself or damaging to others around you, there seems to be a more level-headed middle ground approach. And my suggestion is, sure, opt out of society, but don't opt out of life. There's some things you can do to prepare yourself for the future. This goes more than just people who have already opted out or people who are considering opting out. This is people who are hesitant. You see the news, you see the world kind of falling apart compared to what it used to be. Maybe that's not even true, but maybe you think that way because you're in like a media bubble, or maybe it is true. But there's things you can do, such as getting an education. Don't get an education because you need a job. Get an education for yourself. What do you like? What do you like doing? Get some training in that. It doesn't matter what the institution is. Like, you don't have to go to Harvard. That shit's stupid. Go to a vocational school. Learn on YouTube for free. Learn online. Get something that you can invest into yourself and your community. Like, fuck society as a whole. You and your community is what's important. Like, so your immediate family, if you're close with them, if you care about them. Not everyone does. Your friends, your neighbors, people who have a direct impact on your life and you have a direct impact on theirs. You can participate in less consumerism. Stop helping the world die. Stop fueling the machine that oppresses us. You can learn to be self-sustainable. If you're lucky enough to have property or even access to some property, you could learn to sustain yourself on farming. You could learn to do crafts and trades on the land. Even if you have like a small apartment, there is small scale sustenance farming. But yeah, my biggest suggestion is, sure, fuck society, but invest in yourself, invest in your future. Even if the world falls apart, you have enough tools to hopefully survive, enough skills to survive with your friends and community. If we're just over exaggerating, if the world's perfectly fine on its own path, you then have tools for the future to capitalize on it. You can, if you have a home factory, home automation, home farm, you're doing crafts and trades at home, you can make money off of that. You can then participate in society in the future when it's healthier. You don't have to be doom and gloom. Like, doomerism is not healthy. Pessimism is not healthy. Dwelling on very bleak topics aren't exactly healthy. You can be very, very aware that the world's falling apart around you, but you should still be working to better yourself and to help yourself in your community.
I want to dovetail off of some, what Wes just talked about, and I want our listeners to think all the way back to episode 37, where Kevin and I discussed an ideology that I think can help our listeners, and that's being punk. We talked about that, like, modern punk is about being hopeful. We really touched and talked about that, exactly this topic without naming it. I said, in quote, with millennial culture and Gen Z being focused around pessimism, aloofness, apathy, doom scrolling on social media, that hope is the counterculture to that. It ties in really nicely with what Wes was talking about here, when he was talking about investing in not just only yourself, but your family and your immediate community, because those are some of the very basic tenets of, quote unquote punk ideology: that mutual aid, egalitarianism, humanitarianism, just reducing that suffering. But that also with that rejection of corporate mass culture. So if you need more, I highly suggest going back and re-listening to that episode. It's got some great ideas in it, personally. Obviously I think so, but hopefully you do too.
Like Wes said, though, invest in yourself, and I think that's the best thing you can do in a time and in a world such as this, is invest in yourself. And like Wes said, even if we're wrong, what's it hurt you to better yourself? What's it hurt to invest in yourself? Find that thing that makes you glow up like a fucking Christmas tree and run with it. Wes, before we go to the shoutouts, do we have a Thai word of the day for this week?
Learning Wes with Thai. My wife's still asleep. I want her to hear me talk about this, but we'll do it anyways. So today's Thai word / phrase of the day / couple words of the day, learning Wes with Thai, is nisai, which means like personality or like character. And then we already at one point touched on mai. So like D is good, my D is bad. So like if you put my in front of something, it's bad. So like nisai may D or nisai my D means you have a bad personality, or you're a bad person. And it's not as mean as it sounds, I think and hope, because my wife says it to me all the time. I like to take her flip flop or her like house sandal and just like kick it across the room, just to be an absolute turd. And she'd be like, "Nisai me D." And there's an even stronger one, which is nisai yeah. So like yeah, just like saying yes, like yeah, means like very bad. Yeah is like horrible. And then if you put mak behind something, it means very. So she'll be like, nisai yeah mak, like letting me know that I'm a terrible person for what is essentially bullying her.
So it's more like teasing of like you're a dick,
Yeah,
you're a
yeah,
piece of shit, and then finally like a fuck you.
pretty much, yeah. Sometimes she'll just straight give me an English fuck you. So like there's that.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty universal.
So we have nisai, which is personality character, yeah, which is like really bad, mighty, which is just not good, and mak, which is very. So like if you're, hold on, what words have we gone over previously? Oh, so like we did hua ki, which is fresh off the log, poop fart. So if you do like hua ki mak, it's like a really bad poop fart.
The evolution continues, folks. Stick around next week and find out how much further we get with cutting one fresh off the log. So until then, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Lenny, who the hell do you want to shout out this week?
Shout out obviously is first and foremost goes to my wife Brittany. She did bedtime today all by herself, which is and can be a feat unto its own. I want to shout out, again, I'm going to do this as often as I can, shout you guys out for starting this podcast, so we can have these great discussions. I think today was a real good one. And self-plug, go re-listen to episode 37. You feeling lucky, punk? If you need a little pick-me-up after this. And shout out to Learning Wes with Ty. My favorite part about learning a new language is all the bad things that you're not supposed to say.
My favorite part is when Wes says something in English and wants the Thai translation, and Yui just goes, "Oh no." Wes, who do you want to shout out this week, buddy?
Shout out to my beautiful wife for continually exploiting her and her knowledge on our podcast. Shout out to the people who created Bai Lan, Lay Flat, and all these movements. It's a social counterculture. It's I don't think these are necessarily healthy, but it gave us something good to talk about, and it's a cautionary tale. Shout out to mothers everywhere. It's not easy being a mother in general, but the younger mothers who are raising children in this uncertain world, good on you. And shout out to the Thai language, because I continually fuck that shit up.
Kevin, give us your shouties.
I want to shout out my amazing fiance, Ashley. I want to shout out Wes for putting together yet another amazing script and great conversation piece to talk about. You know, hopefully if there's some people out there feeling this way, they know that they're not alone in it, and maybe they feel a little enlightened by, or they feel a little, that little push to go out there and do something and invest in themselves. So if you're going through it, shout out to you as well, because it ain't easy being Wheezy, but it ain't easy being you either. So just keep at it. Don't lose hope. I wish I knew the Chinese phrase for that, but don't lose hope. Mike, where the fuck are you when we need you? Folks, don't forget to reach out to us at our social medias. Leave us a review. Really helps out the show. And of course, make sure you're following and subscribing on your favorite listening platform as well if you aren't already. If you're checking us out for the first time, welcome. If you've been here, I'm not going to make a joke about why are you still here, but we appreciate the hell out of you. So until then, call your mom. We will talk to you next Saturday and every Saturday here on the Life Midwest podcast. Take care. Have a good one.
I just got a very dirty look from my wife. she's yelling. She's whisper yelling at me, and I can't hear what she's saying because I have headphones on.